Supreme Court is hearing petitions in the Adani-Hindenburg issue. The SEBI has filed an application seeking a 6-month extension to complete its investigation, citing global norms. Dr. Bhattacharya, your observations on this important, aspect in this saga between Adani and Hindenburg. How is it going, to affect, what the Adani Group of companies is going to do, and what kind of a precedent do you think it's also going to set? If there are any baseless allegations here?
Yeah, so, building up on what Dr. Kohli and Gautam Mukherjee said, the crux of what Hindenburg was pushing for is that there is a major related party transaction that's going on, and therefore it's through the related party transaction that share manipulation is happening. The share price have been manipulated so significantly that Mr. Adani became the second richest person in the world. And how this was alleged to have happened is that most of the investments of the Adani Group came from outside, from so-called alleged shell companies, and that more than 90% of the stocks were apparently controlled by these shell companies, which were somehow related to Mr. Adani. Now, these were all allegations, and the objective was that it protects the shareholders, and that the public shareholders were only about 9% or so of the total shareholding, and therefore those who control 90% can actually manipulate the share prices, and therefore that's actually putting the public in harm's way, because they'll be buying shares at an overpriced value and therefore get cheated. So the whole allegation of cheating basically boils down to this point that the share prices were manipulated and the public bought it at an extremely high price. Now, to begin with, the public needs to check what they're buying. But having said that, it's a role of SEBI and the regulators to make sure that there is no wrongdoing happening in the market. Since the time that this whole Hindenburg report had come out, and obviously Hindenburg, as they themselves declared, was for the sake of making quick buck. We're still not sure how they made that buck, in the sense that Hindenburg must have billions of dollars in order to be able to monetize on the report. If they don't have those billions of dollars in order to short the Adani stock, then they will not get the return on that money. So one of the big questions is, who funded Hindenburg? Where did they get the money from in order to be able to monetize the shorting of the Adani stock that they did through the report? But the second point also is that if these allegations are true, then by now Adani should have been history with the kind of beating that they got, because Hindenburg essentially said they don't have the cash in their pocket, they're not having the growth that justifies the kind of valuation they were getting. Then Adani should have been toast by now. It's 4-5 months. They have not only paid back almost $2.5 billion, they have not defaulted on any loan. They are actually cash positive. Most of the companies are growing significantly, and so on and so forth. Now, valuation comes in based on not how you're doing now, which is also an important component, but also what your projections are. Post Hindenburg, what has happened is that the growth rate of Adani has decelerated significantly, because now they don't have access to the cash needed to make future investments. Those investments were at a nationwide scale. They were at a population scale investments. They were looking at where India is going. If India needs hydrogen, let's go and produce hydrogen at a massive scale. If India needs solar, let's produce solar at a massive scale. Is that solar getting produced now? Obviously not. Will that solar get produced 10 months, 2 years down the line? It depends on whether you believe in Mr. Adani or not. He has executed projects earlier. The Adani Group has executed projects earlier at massive scales, and many other companies in India have successfully executed massive scale projects earlier. Therefore, many of the investors did believe what Mr. Adani suggested, and therefore those investments would have given the kind of returns that they were expecting. What Hindenburg's proposition was in the report is that that's all humbug. There will be no such growth happening, no such execution happening. India will not grow, and therefore this valuation is not justified. And all of this valuation is being manipulated. So these were the allegations that were going on. That was the crux of the issue, as also very well explained by Dr. Kohli and Gautam Mukherjee. Now, moving forward, the point is, what is it that the expert committee of 6 people that the Supreme Court had appointed, what does the report really say? That report is going to be tabled today. We don't know what that report is going to say. SEBI, obviously, as Gautam Mukherjee mentioned, is going to take more time. It is an extremely complex issue. There's not a kangaroo court we're talking about. India has got very robust judicial processes. Those processes needs to be followed. If Mr. Adani is in the wrong, then the law of the land should follow. If he is not, then my question is, will Hindenburg be hanged or not? Do we have the transnational jurisdiction to bring Hindenburg to court because they have done significant damage if what they're saying is not true?
Let me tell you, the Supreme Court has said, or rather instructed the SEBI, that you can't say that you need a minimum of 6 months. 14th August is when the court is expecting that they will place the matter around the 14th of August, and telling the SEBI that you should complete the investigations in 6 months, which includes, of course, in retrospect, the months that have gone by. So hence 6 months till August. We can't say you need a minimum 6 months is what the Supreme Court has said. And the Supreme Court has also gone on to say that you also can't say that there was a regulatory failure without a committee report. First, the report needs to be put out, and then only a clarification can be made as to what is going on over here and what were the lapses in this entire saga. Dr. Bhattacharya, your observations of what the Supreme Court has said. Obviously, this is a sensitive matter. The SEBI would need all the resources, all the industry, and all the information it can muster to make sure that at least in front of the Supreme Court, they come up with the right reasons for these kind of allegations.
Right. I mean, in fact, the use of the word lapses, I'm not sure whether that's appropriate because the investigation hasn't happened. So assuming there is a lapse and therefore there is a regulatory wrongdoing, I think those will be assumptions from the court side or whoever is saying that, and wherever the interpretation is coming from, because investigations of the courts have to go through whatever they need to go through before saying that there was a wrongdoing and therefore there was a lapse.
Right. Well, clarification, the court has in fact asked SEBI to submit the report in 3 months, not 6 months. And that is why 14th August will be the date when this matter is going to be placed before the court. Dr. Bhattacharya, continue.
Right. So, let's look at the implications. And that's what, Dr. Kohli was talking about and Sumit were talking about. What is the implication and fallout of this entire saga that's going on? To begin with, again, taking the parameter that Dr. Kohli was talking about, the PE ratio, which is essentially the price divided by the earning. Now, if you have a startup like, let's say, Paytm or Zomato, what is the PE ratio? The earnings are in negative, right? So are we therefore saying that there is a major wrongdoing and lapse happening in terms of these stocks? No. Those who are investing in these stocks know that in future, these stocks will go up significantly, and that's where the pricing happens. If you look at Mona Lisa, I don't believe it's worth millions of dollars. I will not even pay 1,000 rupees for Mona Lisa. I have no value for it. Does it mean that the whole world is playing up the price of Mona Lisa to make a fool out of me? That is not how pricing works, right? And so it's a very good parameter that Dr. Kohli has mentioned. If you look at the old companies of Adani, Adani Ports, ACC before Hindenburg report had a PE ratio of about 54. Post Hindenburg report, it's got a PE ratio of 50. It has not budged. It's not changed. You look at Adani Ports, which is functioning for a long time. It had a PE ratio of 30. It fell down to 23. Big deal. Not much of a difference. But if you look at the new businesses that came in, it had a so-called exorbitant PE ratio of 844 was Adani Total Gas. Now it's a startup. And therefore, its revenue will be very, very low. So its earnings will be very, very low. But people know that India will be guzzling gas. It's an energy guzzling country. And therefore, the bet was on India's economy growing and Adani being at the forefront of it. That fell massively to 156. Adani Green Energy, all the solar, all the hydrogen that we're talking about, which is going to power the clean energy of this country and also help in the climate change and the environment globally, had a PE ratio of 567. That fell to 131. Now, what does this mean? What does the falling really mean? It means access to capital has reduced now. When when these companies issue more shares, they'll be issuing it, or they'll be forced to issue it at a much lower price than what it deserves. And that means there'll be less capital at the disposal of these entities. And therefore, the speed at which gas and green energy and hydrogen and so on and so forth that gets rolled out in this country will be significantly diminished. Now, if you look at also the parallel voices that are coming in, one of the noted economists has gone out and said we should break down all the big companies in India. We should not have any large company in India. And we might as well go back to the village Raj that Mahatma Gandhi had promoted, that there should be no companies. Everything should happen at a village level. Now, our large economy is being driven by small companies. We've got the General Electric, the Microsoft, the Google powering US. We've got Samsung and Kia and so on and so forth powering Korea. We've got the Toyotas and the Mitsubishis and so on powering Japan. We need large companies. And therefore, I'm quite curious to know why there is a synchronization of voices which are targeting large companies in India.
Sure.
And therefore, clearly there's a question mark as to, are these things getting motivated?